Okay, I'll be the first to admit it. Yes, I did freak out a little when I saw what the graphics on the Wind Waker were going to look like. I mean, after all, we were practically promised that realistic, cool look that we saw in Space World 2000. But after getting the pre-order bonus of the Ocarina of Time and Master Quest, I quickly got over that. The Wind Waker takes off about, many centuries after the events of the Ocarina of Time. And if you're not familiar on that one, it does tell you the summary of what happened in the Ocarina of Time, setting up for the Wind Waker. Ganondorf was banished to the dimension, somehow escaped, and wreaked terror. Instead of taking place on a big, vast land, you take place over the sea. There are over 50 different islands, and on one particular island, it becomes a tradition for young boys to dress in green clothes as the hero spoken of in legend and go slay down evil. Of course, they only do it for one day, but certain events happen, such as pirates visiting the island, having your little sister get kidnapped, and going on board with pirates in order to go to the castle to save your sister, only to be thrown out and meet up with a talking boat. The talking boat informs you of what you need to do in order to save your sister. First, let's go over the graphics. As I mentioned before, the graphics were different from what we were expecting. However, the graphics are beautiful. They're in great detail, bring this whole cartoonish look to it, and everything has this great shading on it. Of course, many of you know this as cell shading, and many refer to this as cel-da, but all in all, I believe it turned out great, and I love the look of it. I believe that the true reason why they chose this design was because of the expression on the faces. That, and I believe, is a lot easier to do, and they could get it out faster than they could with the realistic one. So what's new this time around? Well, Link does learn a few new combat abilities, such as the reaction command on the A button when in locked-on sword fights. He receives a few new weapons as he goes through dungeons. And if you haven't guessed it by now, yes, it always has a first part and a second part. The first part, you're supposed to find 3 orbs that allow you to gain access to a tower that allows you to find the weapon that you need to get to slay Ganondorf. And the second part is the plot twist. And if you haven't played that part yet, I won't go into much detail. But the last 2 dungeons before the final dungeon, I would have to say, well, one of them I really liked, and one of them I really didn't. Basically, the first one I really liked was because you felt like you had to go through an escort mission, but she wasn't always in danger. In fact, you would have to use this character and team up and be able to solve certain puzzles by thinking it out clearly. The dungeon after that one, however, I kinda didn't like, mainly because the music was starting to drive me nuts. Not to mention it also reminded me of the water temple in the Ocarina of Time. There was this huge layer, a center in the middle, and it was just easy to get lost even if you had a map. No matter how many times I play this one, I still somehow get lost. And as if it hasn't been already noted, the Wind Waker is your primary weapon in this game, allowing you to give control over other characters, switch between the time of day, control the wind, and open secret areas. However, I feel that unlike in the Ocarina of Time, these areas, the songs you learn to open areas are only used for that, and then nothing else. Except for letting the sages know who is who. Traditional Zelda gameplay is still here. Find a dungeon, find a key, fight the mid-boss, get the weapon from the mid-boss, find more keys, fight the boss of the dungeon, and then move on. Is it boring? No, because each dungeon has different puzzles for you to figure out, and using these weapons in many different ways, such as the leap. You will have to use it to glide, or use it to blow items away that you can then use to solve puzzles, or go from area to area. The same can be said for the grappling hook. You can use it to swing from platform to platform, or you can use it in a different way by taking items away from your enemies. There are two things in this game that I just find that I could not like no matter what anyone would tell me. First one is, yeah, sailing around, it looks cool, but areas are huge, and it's so easy to get bored. Some obstacles pop up from time to time, and you have to watch where you're going. It's annoying, but they do throw in little elements along the way. I also don't like at the very end where you have to find the 8 pieces of the Triforce and put them all back together. This area is huge. Circling around all these islands on the Great Sea can take hours for you to get across and find the right thing that you need. Fortunately, you can get the help of these fish by throwing fish food out for them, and they'll give you information and will mark it down on your map where you need to go. One thing that has always kind of bugged me is that music in Zelda dungeons seem a little, mind-numbing to me. Boss fight music and outdoor areas are fantastic and well represented. Many of the boss fights are truly memorable in this game, and there's a great handful of them I put in my top favorite Zelda boss fights. One other thing that I like about this Zelda game is that after you've beaten it, you can go back again and play it with some different outfits. Link stays in his outset look. His sister stays in the pirate clothes. And you get to see the Hyrulean language translated for those of you who wondered what they said. I also liked how you were sometimes able to take the weapon from your enemy and use it against them. My complaints with the Wind Waker are insignificant compared to how great this game is. This is my third favorite Zelda game in the franchise, and I highly recommend you try it out if you haven't already played it. I'm giving The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker a 5 out of 5. It's a must-buy, must-play, must-own experience.